Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is that you're joining me for this video. Thank you once again for clicking on the Penboy Roy Fountain Pen Review channel. The subject of today's video is going to be the DeLike New Moon Fountain Pen. Now, before I get into the background information, zone, the good, the bad, the ugly, and high noon on this pen, I want to go over a few things. First, the Opus 88 picnic giveaway winner announcement will be done on June 9th. It will be an entirely separate video. I most likely am going to do it live, so that way you guys can make funny comments back as I'm reading them, as well as doing stuff live is fun, I've discovered. Background information. It's a Chinese brand that makes Chinese fountain pens for an Asian market of fountain pen users of about 1 billion people. They are made by Chinese people. Now, some of these Chinese brands make me feel like they're on the cusp of kind of straight up messing with us with the names and the name brands of their pens. For example, DeLike. That sounds a lot to me like dislike or don't like. Now, there's another Chinese brand that has become one of my favorites as of recent called Pen BBS. Now, I don't know what BBS stands for, but I certainly know what BS stands for. What I completely and totally admire, the DeLike fountain pen brand represents racial equality through fountain pens in a way that has been unseen in the history of mankind, be it through any civil rights movement, art, literature, or whatnot. They are ambassadors of unbiased racial equality for sure. Now, this brand makes fountain pens, but not just any fountain pens. No, they make rip-offs of fountain pens that were or are really good from all parts of the world. No one was discriminated against, regardless of race, wealth, culture, religion, background, age. No, if you have a good idea with regard to fountain pens, they will rip it off. And that seems fair. Such an honorable concept. Now, this pen in question is the DeLike New Moon. It is blatantly inspired by the Sailor Pro Gear. That's all I have for the background information. Moving on to the neutral zone. Those elements about the pen that are neither good or bad, or can be good or bad depending on you. Let me start with our nib. Our nib is an extra fine stainless steel branded DeLike nib. It looks rather plain. It's a number 5 size nib. And looking at this nib, it almost looks as if the nib wasn't even tipped. Check out the feed. It's a cheap plastic feed for the number 5 nib. Both the nib and feed are part of an unscrewable nib unit inside of a standard-looking housing. It screws into the grip section, which is tapered with a slight flare and rim. Threads are the same acrylic, being a unified piece with the grip. These screw into the inner threads of the body, which are also made of the same material. The outer threads of the body screw into the cap. After the threads on the body, you have a very slight step. It's very soft, almost unnoticeable. The rest of the body has no branding. Then there is a metal end cap ring, followed by the end finial. The end finial is also acrylic like the rest of the body. Let's take a look at the cap. The overall design is oddly familiar. The finial is all acrylic. It does not have a branding or does not have any logos on the top. Underneath that is a ring that separates a finial from the clip assembly, which is also strangely familiar. The clip is a tension-fixed clip. The clip itself has a familiar step design on the sides. The center band has the DeLike logo on the front and New Moon on the rear, both impressed on a raised step design. The overall design is flat topped and bottom. It was packaged in a box wrapped in a partial sleeve. Inside of the sleeve is a box without any branding. Inside the box is the pen tucked away inside of this plain foam. The pen did not come with an ink cartridge, but it did come with a converter. Alright, now let me go back to the nib. Let's start with how this thing writes. Straight out of the box, the nib wrote okay. I wouldn't say it is good. I also wouldn't say it is bad. It didn't really present any issues. There were no real ink flow issues. It is very dry and stingy when it comes to ink flow. Having said that, there wasn't any skipping. Why is the writing sample part in the neutral zone? Well, most likely because the nib itself doesn't really qualify as good. It's not in the ugly because it's not terrible either. It is simply neutral. It does get the job done. Is it a unique writing experience? Is it a satisfying writing experience? Not at all. Is it a sufficient writing experience? Comparing it to the online is a $19.99 pen. It's a few dollars more than the DeLike New Moon. And those few dollars place the gap between the online and the DeLike by a large margin. It has a number 5 steel Yobo nib, has a decent amount of ink flow, has multiple uses. and its application for infecting other people with the fountain pen virus is more readily apparent with the inclusion of a stylus at the bottom of the pen. Now moving on to the Noodler's Nib Creeper, this one is a $16 pen. I even prefer the Noodler's Nib Creeper over the DeLike in that it has a piston filler, It does require tinkering, it's fun to do until you get to that threshold of frustration. It also has a steel nib and is below $20, yet above $10. The Parker Jotter is also a fountain pen that's under 20 bucks. You can buy it at Staples. It's very uninspiring. It's super duper boring. It doesn't look nearly as interesting as the DeLike. It's made of stainless steel, feels super cheap, but performs moderately well. It uses proprietary cartridges made by Parker, as well as converters made by Parker. This pen is the Pilot Metropolitan. Not only is this pen under $20, this pen is the granddaddy of beginner fountain pens, intermediate awesome fountain pens that don't cost a lot, and fountain pens for an advanced collector or user. By far, one of the best pens for under 20 bucks. Lastly, let's compare it to the very pen that the DeLike was mimicking. The Sailor Pro Gear Slim Transparent Green. This is in an entirely different class of pen. It's an entirely different price range, and as similar as they are in appearance, they couldn't be further apart when it comes to the realities and nuances of what makes the Sailor Pro Gear Slim fantastic, and the DeLike New Moon not fantastic. I got good words. That's all I got for the neutral zone. Moving on to the good. Those elements about the pen that are good. This pen came with a free converter for you to use bottle inks of your choosing. For those individuals who love blue, this pen has blue written all over it. Let's move on to the bad. Let's talk coin. Now, I purchased this pen on eBay for $13.87 from China. I was able to receive this pen within a week and a half, shipping costs included. Now, while that is a very, very decent price, it's actually unreasonably low. The caveat is the lack of representation when it comes to warranty issues. Although these pens are available on eBay and Amazon does support some regulation that protects the buyer, it's nowhere near the support and representation that a retailer supports a buyer with. Now, for 14 bucks, it's not bad, but it's not good either. Why? Good question. I'm glad you asked. Moving on to the ugly. Those elements about the pen that should not be, but are. On the DeLike New Moon fountain pen, quality control did not show up. It is not here. Neither the word quality or control should be in the same sentence when describing the DeLike fountain pen. This thing is a bag of flaws. Let me start with our end finial. You don't really have to look too closely, but you'll see that there's an obvious gap between the end finial and the ring. In some areas, it's thick enough to easily place a credit card between the ring and the end finial. Now, $14 might not be a lot for a fountain pen, but it certainly is for a single credit card stand. The same flaw exists for the top finial, but it's not to the same extent. And then there's just the overall feel of the acrylic. The acrylic feels very waxy, almost like I'm holding a candle in my hand. The look and feel overall lacks any kind of quality. Using it posted or unposted feels a lot like you're writing with a naked crayon. Oh yeah, and then there's this. This was totally my fault. How do I dare screw the cap onto the pen and not expect this to happen? The center band came off of the pen. Underneath the center band looks like residue of glue. I suspect this glue might have been Elmer's glue, or possibly the same glue that Derek Zoolander used to build the school for children who want to read good and do stuff. It didn't hold up. If the pen were $10, 50 cents, that's unacceptable. That's all I'm going to talk about with the ugly. It's high noon. Decision-making time. Should you or should you not pull the trigger on the DeLike New Moon fountain pen? Now, this pen is an acrylic-turned fountain pen at a price point of $14. It does write as it should. And I do understand that a pen like this does have its place in the fountain pen universe, much in the same way a toy xylophone has its place against a full-blown marimba. Now, as low as the price point is, there are better options. Those options could be a Pilot Metropolitan or a Parker Jotter fountain pen. Both of these pens can be purchased at a retail store, a brick-and-mortar store, online retailers, and those items will be backed by legitimate retailers and sellers with pre-existing infrastructure designed for the comfort and security and peace of mind of the buyer. I really wanted to like it, but the overall flaws and design elements and quality control prevented me from liking it. As a matter of fact, I DeLike it. So that was my review on the DeLike New Moon fountain pen. Thank you so much for joining me. And don't forget about the Penboy Roy Fountain Pen Review Channel discount code. Check the details below on how to get a discount.
Smoking is bad for you. It makes trying to make babies as frustrating as trying to punch a cooked spaghetti noodle through bullet-resistant glass. Be well, be safe.